Good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Abhishek from Natural Remedies. We welcome you to this GAN webinar. Today's GAN webinar, the topic is feeding strategies of high-yielding dairy cattle. So it is a very interesting topic, and today we will try to understand what are the nutritional demands of high-yielding cows, what are the feeding challenges and solutions. For that, we have an expert, Professor Suryanarayana, with us. If I share you his details, like he's a professor and head Department of Livestock Farm Complex and the College of Veterinary Science, Tirupati. He completed his MBA in 2008, PhD in Animal Nutrition in 2010. He completed his MVSc in Feed and Fodder in 1991 and BVSc in 1989. If I talk about his awards and fellowships, he has the fellowships of National Academy of Veterinary Nutrition and Animal Welfare, Animal, Nut- Animal Nutrition Association, Animal Nutrition Society of India, then 7 national level Best Scientist Awards, 5 state level Best Scientist Awards. If I talk about his scholarly impacts, he has around 58 research articles, 143 extension publications for farmers, and if I talk about authored books, these 3 definitive textbooks on animal nutrition, 3 book chapters in specialized veterinary text. And talking about educational materials, he has 15 plus of technical manuals and training. So I welcome Professor Suryanarayana for this webinar and help us to take forward and understand about today's topic.
Oh, thank
Thank you,
you.
sir. You can share the slide, sir.
Okay. Hello,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
sir. Very all the
Yes, sir.
listeners, and let me first at the outset, let me thank the Natural Remedies for giving me this opportunity to interact with these legends in animal nutrition and dairy farming. Myself, Dr. Suryanarayan, I am working as professor and head, and also the technical officer to the vice chancellor at Venkateswara Veterinary University, Tirupati. Oh, let me. So today I would like to deal a topic on feeding of high-yielding dairy cattle. So these are the things which I try to cover the following topics in my presentation. One is nutritional demands of high-yielding animals, high-yielding cows. So we have to understand the energy, protein, fiber, and mineral requirements. So lactation phases, different phases of lactation, early, mid, and late. Then feeding challenges and some of the solutions. So managing metabolic disorders or metabolic diseases, especially ketosis, milk fever, and sometimes SARA, subacute rumen acidosis. Then avoiding acidosis and digestive upset. Then importance of water and dry matter intake, which is very, very important for high yielding animals. Dry matter intake is the most concern for maintaining the dairy cattle, high yielding dairy cattle. Then strategies for feeding during summer stress. Then available of local feed resources. Then practical based feeding schedules and cost effective feeding practices and some of the things that are very much needed for the farmers. So these are the things which I try to cover in my presentation. So before actually going into the actual presentation, I need to give some information for you. One is we make out the differences between a ruminant, because a cow is said to be a ruminant, whereas there are other called non-ruminants, which are the pigs and poultry. So let us have a quick look at the differences between the monogastric nutrition and the ruminant nutrition. So monogastric is digestion with a single compartment, whereas ruminant includes four-chambered stomach, and cellulose is less predominant, and sometimes it takes place only in ceca. The fiber digestion takes place only in ceca, whereas cellulose digestion is more predominant in ruminants. Then digestion occurs by digestive juices, whereas these are the digestion in ruminants. It occurs by the enzymes secreted by the bacteria that harbor the rumen. Then examples are humans, rabbits, cats for monogastrics, and poultry also. Then for ruminants, it's cows, sheep, and goats. They have neutral saliva, whereas ruminants have alkaline saliva. Ptyalin, which acts on the starch. It is present in monogastrics, whereas it's absent in ruminant nutrition. End products are glucose, whereas here it is volatile fatty acids in ruminants, in case of ruminants. Then more sensitive to plant anti-nutritional factors. whereas these are less sensitive, but it has a cumulative ruminal effect. About when toxic principles are there, the ruminants show a cumulative ruminal effect. Then protein supply is through metabolizable protein, and here it is done mainly by microbial protein. I'll tell you in my future slides how this microbial protein is synthesized in the cows. Then regurgitation, not seen, whereas it is seen, chewing the cud, and regurgitation is seen in the ruminant nutrition. Then carbohydrates are the staple food, whereas this is crude fiber is a staple food. And there is no chance for bypass nutrient technology in case of monogastrics, whereas there are very many chances for more productivity for bypass nutrients in case of ruminants. So let us make a clarity on the differences between the monogastric nutrition and ruminant nutrition. Next, something to know about the rumen microbes and the rumen conditions. So rumen microbes, they sustain and adapt best to the specific conditions of the rumen ecosystem. Mainly the saccharolytic bacteria, they predominate. And carbohydrates, cellulose make most of the substrate for microbial fermentation. And low oxygen concentration will also exist in the rumen. It ranges between minus 250 to minus 450 millivolts, which encourages the obligatory anaerobes to grow well. And some of the aerobic conditions are also present, which are called as facultative anaerobes. And there are a different gas mixture, a combination of gas mixture, which is about 60, which contains about 65% carbon dioxide, 27% methane, 7% 0.2% hydrogen with 0.01% of hydrogen sulfide. And the obviously the rumen temperature will be from 38 to 42 degrees Celsius. And Cooper's salivary secretions of bicarbonates and phosphates buffer the rumen fermentation, usually to a pH of between 6 to 7. That is the carbonates, the bicarbonates that are present in the saliva, they maintain the rumen pH between 6 and 7. This we talk about in the future slide about the salivary secretions and its importance in maintaining the rumen pH. I'll be discussing this topic in my coming slides. Then why only you prefer carbohydrates for ruminants? One is anaerobes cannot add or remove hydrogen ions and cannot be oxidized. They cannot oxidize the food. Until the food is oxidized, we don't get the energy. So what happens is for this type of oxidoreduction state, carbohydrate is said to be the ideal substrate. And carbons in the carbohydrates has an average redox state of 0, which is more favorable for anaerobic bacteria. So for that reason, we say that carbohydrates are the best for ruminants. Then reactions for what are redox reactions? A small information. Reactions involving the transfer of electrons are called as redox reactions. Then if you quickly see the ruminants, it has four compartments. One is rumen for cellulose digestion, abomasum for retention of foreign bodies, omasum for churning and maceration of the food materials, and abomasum, which is called as the true stomach. So naturally, the ruminant nutrition includes feeding, digestion, absorption, and metabolism. Then why you have to go for certain feeding systems for formulating the ration? One is to meet the energy requirements. The energy values of the feeds is important. For example, if you feed carbohydrates and fats, of course, vitamins and minerals, they don't yield any energy, but they are added, they are organic components, which are added for the better utilization of the minerals, or better utilization of the nutrients. Then deficiency in any one of the nutrients may impair the metabolism. So ruminants have a forestomach for fermentation containing large amounts of microorganisms. So these break down the cellulose in fibrous plant material into a form that can be digested. And it's important here is that a symbiosis exists between the ruminants and the microbes. As the microbes need energy and nutrients in forage for their own nutrition, and microbes are finally broken down because the microbe, they break up the feed ingredients, they break up the nutrients, and they make their own protein, which is called as microbial crude protein. And this microbial crude protein is the only source of protein for the animal. So there occurs a symbiosis between the bacteria that is present in the rumen and the ruminant. So ruminants need lesser grains and concentrated diets than monogastrics such as pigs and poultry. Then feeding of high yielding animals. So actually what are these high yielding animals are called? Just a minute, please. So cows giving more than 20 kg per day and buffaloes yielding more than 15 kg per day. So they are said to be high yielders. So generally the milk production in the first 6 weeks of lactation will be so high. The secretion of the nutrients in the milk exceeds the rate of uptake of nutrients from the digestive tract. That's why we see a case of negative energy balance, because lactation is a stressful condition for the animal. So once the lactation is completed, once the cowing is completed, during lactation there will be a less intake of the dry matter, which leads to the negative energy balance. So high energy requirement for milk production plus low feed intake can result in an energy deficit, which the condition is called NEB, net negative energy balance. When more NEB results in metabolic disorders like fatty liver, ketosis, and sometimes milk fever. So nutrient deficit is compensated by diversion of the nutrients from the body resource. That is, you have to mobilize the body fat and protein, resulting in the weight loss. Too much loss in the body can prove harmful and uneconomical. So here, the importance of this slide is that as soon as calving is over, we have to take care that animals should eat sufficient dry matter intake, because the secretion of the nutrients from the milk is more than intake of the nutrients from the dry matter. So we have to balance. Otherwise, it leads to negative energy balance. Then appetite during early lactation. You see, up to 8 weeks, there will be a reduced appetite by 2 to 3 kilo per day. So it is difficult to meet the nutrient requirements, especially energy of such high yielders, through normal concentrates, mixture, and fodder. So high energy diets to be formulated, and you can adopt a feeding method called challenge feeding to be adopted. Adequate fiber of 36% neutral detergent fiber in a total ration is critical for maintaining the normal milk fat. All such cows and buffaloes will remain under negative energy balance during the first 5 months of lactation. So this is the most critical period for any cow or any buffalo after it has been cowed. So some of the points to be discussed, some of the headings to be discussed for high yielders. One is the modern concepts of ruminant feeding, which includes TMR and bypass nutrients. Then another heading is transition period. Then another heading is dry matter intake. Another thing is metabolic diseases, which includes milk fever, ketosis. Then the other topic is challenge feeding. And the last one is heat stress. So these are the headings which we have to read or we have to study while dealing with high yielding animals. So let us see one by one what are the things and what are these things and how to tackle all these things. So modern concepts of ruminant feeding. You see, we have one thing like modern concepts is complete feeding system. Then another one is rumen methane mitigation techniques. Third one is bypass nutrient strategy. And fourth one is CNCPS, cornel net carbohydrate protein system strategy. Then fifth one is application of biotechnology. Of all these things, CNCPS or application of biotechnology need not be we need not worry about these two, because these are all not reachable. It cannot be reached to the farmer, because the farmer cannot apply these things. Only these three things the farmer can do better, or even the complete feeding system and bypass nutrient strategy. These two can be very well adopted by the farmer to maintain the milk yield in high yielding animals. So let us see one by one what is this complete feeding system. It's the best system of feeding as it improves the nutrient utilization for higher growth rate and reduces the cost per kg live weight gain. Nutrients required are proteins and energy through fiber, fat and water-soluble vitamins and minerals. Complete feed means TMR, total mixed ration containing the both roughages and concentrates under different ratios, 50 is to 50 or 60 is to 40 or 70 is to 30, as per the convenience of the farmer or the nutritionist. Then another important thing is methane. So methane is said to be a greenhouse gas. Nearly a lactating cow will produce 400 grams of methane per day. And another thing is like livestock accounts to nearly 12 to 19% of the global greenhouse gases, You know that methane is more, it's 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide in global warming. So that is the role of methane. So we have to see that the methane production or methogenesis should be minimized. And we can say that almost all among ruminants, cattle are said to be the highest emitters of methane, followed by sheep, goat, and buffaloes. You see, when methane, why you have to talk about methane is nearly 12% of the gross energy is lost as methane, and it is a waste. So if you can reduce this 12% loss, most of the energy will be diverted for milk production. So how to reduce this 12% loss of methane? So first of all, how methane is produced? It is produced by the reduction of carbon dioxide with hydrogen gas. 4H2 plus bicarbonate in the presence of hydrogen, it gives methane plus water. CO2 is produced from the conversion of pyruvate to acetate and breakdown of sugars to pyruvic acid. It gives hydrogen. Then about 4.5 grams of methane is produced for every 100 grams of carbohydrate that is fermented in the rumen. To preserve this energy, effort should be put to reduce the methanogenesis and also to reduce the wastage of energy from the gross energy. So rate of production of methane is fast immediately after the feed consumption, and in cow it was estimated at about 30 liters per hour. So this is the importance of methane. So there is every need to reduce the methanogenesis in order to save energy for the cow. You see, as the fiber level of the ruminant ration increases, acetic acid decreases. So fiber is more important for the production of acetic acid, and fiber fraction is usually broken down to acetic, propionic, and butyric acid, which are called as VFA, volatile fatty acids. And about 60% of the digestible energy from the fibrous carbohydrates is converted to volatile fatty acids, and about 8% crude protein in the diet is required to provide minimum ammonia levels, because this ammonia is utilized by the rumen bacteria to synthesize the microbial crude protein, and this microbial protein, as I said, is utilized for the animal. So requirements are calculated based on how fast these nutrients are graded and how rapidly the feed passes the rumen, that is rate of digestion and rate of passage. So how to reduce this methane? There are two ways to reduce methane production in the rumen. One is feeding of unsaturated fatty acids. Why you have to feed unsaturated fatty acids means unsaturated fatty acids have a chemical property of entering into chemical reactions. They get oxidized utilizing the hydrogen that is present in the rumen. So when hydrogen is utilized by the unsaturated fatty acids, these unsaturated fatty acids will get converted to saturated fatty acids. So all the hydrogen that is present in the rumen will be utilized for the oxidation of these unsaturated fatty acids, and there will be no more hydrogen to get reduced to methane. This is one way of reducing methanogenesis, and another way of reducing or inhibiting the methane is using feed additives like chloroform, chloral hydrates, and copper salts. So this is the importance of methane. Next is the bypass nutrient technique, bypass nutrients. So what are these bypass nutrients? Bypass nutrient is a fraction of nutrient which gets fermented in the rumen to a comparatively low degree and becomes available at the lower part of the gastrointestinal tract. That is, it bypasses the rumen and reach the intestines, at which level it is more available. When once it reaches the intestines, the protein is more available for milk production, and there is a higher chance for getting more production of the milk. So here I wanted to say one thing. If the protein is broken down in the rumen, the microbial the ammonia that is released from the protein will be taken up by the microbes, and they synthesize microbial crude protein whose biological value is only 70. But there are certain protein where the biological value will be nearing to 85. For example, if you take groundnut cake, where the biological value is more than 80%. So if the groundnut is fed to the cattle or high yielding animals, this groundnut cake will be fermented or will be broken down in the rumen, and the microbial protein will be synthesized from this groundnut cake, whose biological value is 70. So from 82, we are getting a biological value of 70. So there will be loss of 10. So protein quality is not important in case of ruminants, whereas protein quantity is important. This should be noted. The point should be noted. Known examples of these bypass nutrients are protected proteins, amino acids, protected fats, protected starch, chelated minerals, and vitamins. So supplementation of this type of protein can improve the productivity in terms of improved efficiency of meat, milk, and wool production. This was all for all the ruminants. So bypass fat, there is another term called bypass fat. It improves the milk yield, fat corrected milk, efficiency of nutrient utilization, postpartum recovery of the body weight, body condition score, reproductive performance, and alleviate the problems of negative energy balance without adversely affecting the dry matter intake and rumen fermentation. So bypass fat, it improves mainly, it corrects the negative energy balance. That is more important. Then protected amino acids. Here you can see that methionine and lysine, these are the two limiting amino acids for the milk yield. So if you can feed the rumen protected methionine and rumen protected lysine, it will be very promising for the cow performance, milk yield, and protein content. And some research has been also been taken in by Mazzinani et al., where the chemical techniques for protecting amino acids could be useful and decrease amino acid breakdown in the rumen. It was beneficial on feed intake, weight gain, and some blood factors and animal performance. This research paper has been published in the Journal of Advanced Veterinary and Animal Research. Here you can see a schematic diagram. I have some 2 or 3 protected when you feed the protein, total protein through the diet. Some of the protein will be degraded in the rumen, and some of the protein will escape. This is called bypass. Will escape the intestines. From intestines, it is broken down to amino acids. Then it is reached to milk udder, where we get more milk production. And some of the ammonia that is released from the breakdown of the protein in the rumen will be taken up by the rumen bacteria to produce microbial protein. Here, this picture, the pathway of protein utilization in the ruminant. This is also a very good illustration. You can see feed protein. Some of it will, here we have three factors in the feed protein. One is undegradable protein. Another one is NPN. NPN is non-protein nitrogen substances like urea. Then another one is degradable protein, which is degradable in the rumen. This is NPN is also degradable in the rumen. Whereas undegradable protein, it is not degraded in the rumen, but it directly goes into the intestines where it gets degraded. So this NPN and degradable protein, we get ammonia. From this ammonia, bacteria take up this ammonia, they produce microbial protein. So this is how the protein pathway in ruminants takes place. This is also another illustration because I want to make it very clear about this rumen bypass protein. Feed protein, RDP is rumen degradable and rumen undegradable with NPN, non-protein nitrogen substances. So a feed protein contains all these three. So when it is given, rumen undegradable protein reaches the small intestines, whereas NPN is broken down to ammonia. Then RDP is broken down to amino acids. From amino acids, ammonia is released. This ammonia will be taken up by the bacteria to produce microbial crude protein. So this microbial crude protein along with rumen undegradable protein will reach the intestines and there is a chance for a increase in milk production. So these are some of the strategies to maintain these high yielding animals. Then what is bypass fat? So bypass fat supplementation in high yielding cattle can enhance milk production and composition. They improve the body condition, potentially improve reproductive performance. Studies have shown that bypass fat supplementation, especially during early lactation, it minimizes the negative energy balance and promote faster recovery from it, leading to increased milk yield. So our main motto is to minimize this negative energy balance. What happens when there is more negative energy balance, it leads to metabolic diseases. I'll be explaining all this in the coming slides. What are these metabolic diseases and how it comes? Then there were contrary results on this bypass fat also. Supplementing with bypass fat did not impact the average milk production. According to the study's findings, supplementing with bypass fat had no positive effects on milk production. So there are both positive and negative results about this bypass fat. Then rumen resistant starch. It also resists starch in the rumen and its instead process in the small intestine can enhance nutrient utilization. They improve the milk production and potentially reduce the risk of metabolic disorders. Here you can make a note of it that the rumen resistant starch will reduce the risk of metabolic disorders. And a research by Rebecca et al. They say that high starch diet improve the milk production, nutrient digestibility, and environmental efficiency by reducing the methane yield in dairy cows in mid-lactating dairy cows. This is research work done by Rebecca et al. Then there is another system among modern feeding methods. One is cornel net carbohydrate protein system. Of course, this is not practicable by the farmers or only it can be done in vitro. But for information, I am presenting these slides here also. So it's a CNCPS is a nutritional model that evaluates the environmental and nutritional resources available in an animal production system and enables the diet formulation closely matching the animal requirements. This model includes a library of about 700 different ingredients that provide a platform for describing the chemical composition of the diet to be formulated. According to this system, carbohydrates and proteins are divided into different fractions. So we'll see in the coming two slides how these carbohydrates and proteins are divided into different fractions based on their solubility in borate phosphate buffer, neutral detergent, and acid detergent. So a quick look at the protein fractions in CNCPS system. These are categorized into three. One is A is NPN. NPN means urea, which is very much readily soluble in the rumen, instantly soluble or instantly degradable. Then we have B1, B2, and B3. These are the three categories of protein which are partially soluble in the rumen. Then C is said to be insoluble or undegradable. So if you say the one that is dissolved in borate phosphate buffer, it is solution A and B1. These are soluble. A and B1 are soluble. B2, B3, and C are insoluble in borate phosphate buffer. Whereas in neutral detergent fiber, A, B1, B2 are soluble. B3 and C are insoluble. Whereas in acid detergent fiber, acid detergent solution, we have A, B1, B2, B3 are soluble, whereas C is totally insoluble. C is nothing but lignin. Lignin cannot be solubilized in any detergent solution. Next, coming to the carbohydrate fractions in CNCPS system, here they have categorized the carbohydrate degradation rate into four fractions. One is Ca, which is readily soluble sugars and organic acids. Sugars means soluble sugars. Then CB1, starch and pectins to a lesser extent. Then CB2, available cell wall content means cellulose, hemicellulose are included in the cell wall content. And CC, unavailable lignin, which is totally not digested by the solutions. Then this is the most important topic which would like to share here with you all. This is called transition period. So what is this transition period? Transition period is 3 weeks before parturition and 3 weeks after parturition. It's very, very difficult situation for any cow that has been cowed. So what happens during this transition period? One is there is a chance for metabolic diseases like ketosis, milk fever, and SARA, subacute rumen acidosis. Then there is delayed uterine ovulation. Involution means coming the uterus to a normal position after parturition. That's called involution. So there is a delayed uterine involution and anestus. Then there is chance for uterine infections, and there is a chance for conception failures. Then there will be difficulty in calving difficulties. Then retained fetal membranes, which is also called as retention of placenta. Then there will be lameness, mastitis. So these are all the complications when transition period is not properly tackled. Now let us see what are the impact of this transition period. One is once you should concentrate on balanced nutrition. Then you should concentrate on immune functions. You should concentrate on stress management with a special focus on reduction of the metabolic challenges or metabolic diseases, then enhancing the resilience to environmental stresses, and improving the overall well-being. So these are all the things which you have to concentrate during transition period in high-yielding cows. Now let us come to the dry matter intake. I already told in the beginning that the dry matter intake will be reduced soon after the cow has calved. So what happens when the cow takes less dry matter, when the dry matter intake is reduced in a newly calved animals? During lactation, dairy cows experience significant changes in dry matter intake, milk yield, and live weight because it will be losing its weight when it is not taking any dry matter properly. Naturally, the body reserves will be mobilized. So when the body reserves are mobilized, there will be a loss of weight and nearly 500 grams per day. A cow, on an average, it loses about 500 grams per day. Then milk production and associate energy requirements peak around 6 to 10 weeks into lactation, but dry matter usually peaks later. That means milk production will enhance earlier as compared to dry matter. Then cows initially experience a negative energy balance, often losing weight, but dry matter increases as the lactation progresses. Live weight changes are influenced by factors like parity and body condition. So parity means number of calvings will also influence the live weight changes. Then feed intake significantly impacts the milk yield. Increased feed intake, particularly during early lactation, can lead to higher milk production. Each additional kg of dry matter consumed can support 2 to 2.4 kg of more milk, provided if the feed quality and the digestibility are proper. You see that is the importance of dry matter intake during early lactation. So we have to take care that the cow eats proper dry matter during early lactation. Then total dry matter intake increased with increasing milk yield. Cows with higher milk yield produce milk with lower fat and protein concentration due to a combination of cow genetics, diet, and a dilution effect. So both are inversely proportional. Milk yield and milk fat are inversely proportional. Then let us speak about when the dry matter intake is reduced, naturally it leads to metabolic diseases in cows. This is particularly true in case of high yielding animals. Now let us see. Actually, when you speak of metabolic diseases, we have to speak mainly for two diseases. That is, one is milk fever and another one is ketosis and sometimes SARA, acidosis, rumen acidosis. So what are the predisposing factors for milk fever? This is most predominant metabolic disease that occurs in high yielding cows. So we have to tackle this one. One is age of the cow. For every year, the risk increases by approximately 9% per lactation. You see, the risk increases by, as the lactation progresses, the cow is more prone for milk fever. Then high producing cows, and when producing high amount of cholesterol, they are also prone for milk fever. Then Jersey cows are more susceptible than Holstein cows. Then high cation level in the feed, like potassium and sodium, inhibits calcium mobilization from the bones. So when there is calcium, when there is less calcium mobilization from the bones, naturally it affects the milk yield because calcium is the main nutrient that is present in the milk. The low magnesium level in the diet, even low magnesium level in the diet reduces the calcium absorption in the gut. Then reduce intake. For example, if you have any mycotoxins or aflatoxins in the diet, it takes reduced intake of the dry matter. So naturally, there will be reduction in the calcium intake. Then high estrogen level around calving inhibits calcium mobilization. Then calcium intake during dry periods reduces the ability for calcium utilization from other sources, pastures or legume fed cows during dry period. So these are some of the predisposing factors for the occurrence of the milk fever in high yielding cattle. Here, if you can see how the blood calcium levels are regulated. This is normal blood calcium. So when the blood calcium level decreases, it stimulates the release of parathyroid hormone. This parathyroid hormone, it targets the kidney, activating the hormone called 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol, that is vitamin D3. This stimulates, in turn, this stimulates the rumen to absorb more calcium from the diet. So when more calcium is absorbed from the rumen into the blood, naturally the blood calcium level increases. So this is how the blood calcium levels are regulated in a cow. If you see, there are different types of milk fever. One is normal lactating cow. You see the different values here. The normal range is 9 to 11 mg per 100 ml calcium and 4 to 7 mg of phosphorus and about 2 to 2.5 is the magnesium. Normal at parturition, it should be 6.8 to this one, then 3.2, then 2.5 to 3.5. Milk fever stage 1, stage 2, we have stage 3. So mostly we see this type of stage 2 milk fever we see in the field conditions. And stage 3 is, you see here, is the calcium levels have still gone down. It's only 3.5. So that's how they change at different stages. The calcium, phosphorus and magnesium. All these three minerals are discussed for milk production. Then there is a change in the insulin glucose also. Positive relationship exists between insulin and glucose and that will be disturbed during milk fever. Blood glucose is high at parturition due to increased stress and resulting elevation of glucocorticoids. Here you see excessive glucocorticoids at parturition is a causative factor for because calcium absorption is decreased in glucocorticoid treated animals because of a decreased levels of 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol receptors in the intestine and mucosa. So glucocorticoid, if these are more, naturally the calcium absorption is reduced. So you should see that the glucocorticoid levels should not be increased. Animal does not respond with elevated insulin level because low calcium levels inhibit insulin secretion. So this is the some of the predisposing factors for the occurrence of the milk fever. Then another important is DCAD, dietary cation anion difference, which is very much important for maintaining, for reducing the milk fever. One is chloride and sulfur as anions and sodium and potassium as cations. So these help to determine the blood and urine pH. Slightly acidic conditions are needed for the proper mobilization of the bones so that more calcium can be released for colostrum and milk production. So if DCAD is not properly maintained naturally, another thing is to be tackled is heat stress in cattle. It can result in the factors reduce feed intake, reduce fertility rates, then increase production costs and increase mortalities. So these are all some of the things that happens when the cow is stressed. Then as said, the ability of the heat stress dairy, one of the disadvantage in heat stress dairy cows is it will not be able to mobilize the adipose tissue. So when there is no proper mobilization of the adipose tissue, there will be less energy for the milk production. This is also one of the cause for a reduced milk production soon after calving in high yielding animals. When there is reduced milk production in warmer conditions, you cannot directly say that it is mainly due to a reduced dry matter intake. But it's only an indication that reduced dry matter intake could be maybe due to heat stress that may be due to the animal facing the heat stress. That is one of the point to be noted, but it's not exactly the same this thing. Then another one is when the dry matter intake is reduced due to heat stress, it decreases the energy and nutrient intake, but increases the energy demand. So naturally there will be a demand for energy, but due to less dry matter intake, there will be decreased energy and nutrient intake. Together, these factors, they reduce the productivity. Lower dry matter intake may be attributed to the behavioral adaptations to ameliorate to lessen the internal heat load due to feed fermentation. And another one is there will be changes, there will be a lot of changes in the blood distribution. The blood distribution will be away from the gut, uterus, and udder and internal organs. And it comes to the peripheral circulation where it facilitates the heat exchange with the environment. So these are the two changes that take place when the animal is heat stressed. So this results in depressed rumination and longer time for feed to be digested. So heat stress is also one of the factor in high yielding animals for a reduced milk production. You see here, this picture is taken from internet where you can see the nutrient physiology of the animal under stress. Here you can see adopt point. Here you can see the primary feeding care correcting because when the animal is heat stressed, naturally there will be a less energy intake, less dry matter intake. So naturally there will be a reduced energy intake. Then Then there will be the CP content of the feed, it should be about 17%, in which the RDP, rumen degradable protein, should be 10% of the CP. So these are the things which you have to take when the animal is feed stressed. And some of the specialized feeding means we have to add some of the feed additives like yeast fermentation, rumensin buffers, bicarbonates, like this. Then another one is clean and shaded drinkers. You have to give electrolytes, hydration therapy. Then miscellaneous care like nicotinic acid medication, vitamins and rumen protected nutrients. Then proper heat stress assessment, equal cooling to evil. So these are some of the things which we have to take up when the animal is heat stressed. Then actually coming to the feeding phases of lactation in high yielding animals, we have 5 phases for lactation. One is 5 distinct phases, which is early lactation. That's called phase 1 from 1 to 70 days, wherein there will be a peak milk production. That is after calving. Postpartum 1 to 70 days is said to be the early lactation period. Then peak dry matter intake, it lasts for 70 to 140 days. And once the dry matter intake is increased, naturally there will be a declining the milk production postpartum. Then there is mid and light lactation, 140 to 305. The milk production will further decline postpartum. Then there is dry period, which is 60 to 14 days before the next lactation. And there is transition or close-up period, 14 days before parturition. So these are different feeding phases of lactation for any animal, and that too particularly for high yielding. Then here, if you can see, in early lactation, there will be body reserves used for milk production. Early lactation, since the dry matter intake is reduced, naturally the body reserves will be utilized for for energy production or milk production. Then there will be live weight will be constant, and in mid lactation, there will be increased dry matter intake with a decline in the milk production. Whereas in late lactation, the body reserves are regained for next lactation, and during dry period, the rumen rehabilitation will take. So these are some of the phases: early lactation, mid lactation, late lactation, and dry period. For example, if you see how much dry matter will take as compared to when it is related to the body weight of the animal. For high producing animals, high producing cows, it takes about 4% plus of the body weight, dry matter intake. Whereas low producing takes 2. Dry cows, it takes 2% of the body weight. Heifers 12 to 4 months, it takes 2.5. 6 to 12 months take about 2.75% of the body weight dry matter intake. Then 3 to 6 months, it will be around about 3%. So these are different, this only for information I'm giving you. Then actually the nutrient requirements that are needed for high producing animals. One is water requirement. One is 60 to 70 liters of water each day for maintenance, plus an extra of 4 to 5 liters per each liter of milk produced. So this is the water requirement for the high producing milk animal. Then requirements increase by 6 liters per day for every 4 degrees Celsius rise in air temperature. So for every 4 degrees, the animal consumes 6 liters per day. Lactating cows will drink about 150 to 200 liters per day in the summer months. Then crude protein, its bypass protein is 35 to 40% of the CP. For example, if the CP content is, you are feeding 100%, it should be 35 to 40% should be bypass. That is rumen and degradable protein should be around about 35 to 40% in early lactation and 30 to 35 of CP in late lactation. This should be noted. So for every feed that you feed to the animal, it should contain a minimum of 10% bypass protein or rumen and degradable protein. This should be noted. Then requirements for metabolizable methionine and lysine should be considered because these two are the limiting amino acids for milk production. You see stage of lactation percentage. If you see the percentage of protein, early lactation it should be 16 to 18%, mid lactation to 14 to 16, late lactation 12 to 14, and dry period is 12 to 10 to 12% of the protein is sufficient in the ration. Then requirements of roughages and fats. Complete feed should not contain less than 21% ADF or 28% NDF. It should not contain less than that one. Then more than 80% fiber should come from lush green forage or good quality silage. And recommended roughage to concentrate should be 50 to 50 or 60 to 40 or 75 is to 25 in early, mid, and late lactation, respectively. So this is the ratio of TMR, or total mixed ration, or complete ration, which you have to feed to the high-yielding animals. Then Bureau of Indian Standards, they have specified 3% and 2.5% fat in type 1 and type 2 concentrates. Type 1 is 18% and type 2 is about 20% protein. Whereas NRC feeding standards have recommended 3% fat in the complete feed for dairy cattle. Recent reports say that up to 5% can also be added to improve the quantity and quality of the milk. But it should be noted here that when the fat percentage is still more increased, it should not be more than 5%. If it increases 5%, the rumen fermentation will come to a stop. So dietary fat should not be more than 5% in the diet. Then salt and sugar, salt and urea, it should be 0.5% of the ration, dry matter, or 1% of the concentrated mixture. Then urea, it should be 3% of the concentrated mixture or 1% of the total dry matter intake. Then minerals, you see that calcium is the most crucial mineral in case of high-yielding animals. At the onset of the lactation, there will be more demand for calcium, and so blood calcium level falls. This stimulates, this slide I've already explained you in a illustration. This stimulates the secretion of the parathyroid hormone, activates vitamin D3, increases the absorption of the calcium from the rumen intestines and mobilization of bone calcium. The whole process here, you have to note, this whole process takes within 24 to 48 hours. That is 1 to 2 days it takes, and can't prevent the animal from milk fever, as most of the nearly 60%, more than 16%, 60% of the milk fever cases occurs within 24 hours of parturition. So, first of all, what we have to do is we have to feed. That's what I was telling you. We have to go for challenge feeding. Even before the onset of parturition, you have to give extra ration for the cow so that this milk fever prevalence can be reduced. So to avoid milk fever, best feeding practice is to provide low calcium, that is less than 50 grams per day during dry period, and last 2 to 3 weeks, and it should be increased to 100 grams per day at least 2 days before parturition. So this is how, in order to prevent the milk fever, this is how you have to feed the dietary calcium. Then calcium requirements. In high-yielding animals, cows require high calcium in lactation to produce large quantities of milk. Adequate dietary calcium is crucial for maintaining bone integrity and milk production. Diet for these cows should aim at least 0.6% calcium on a dry matter basis, but you can supplement calcium carbonate also in the feed where it improves the milk production. Then for information, the cow's milk is an excellent source of calcium. According to the US Department of Agriculture, 1 cup, almost 8 fluid ounces of low-fat milk provides 314 milligrams of calcium, which is 24% of our daily value for calcium. Our means humans. So this is said by Food and Drug Association of USA. Then recent research indicates that calcium supplementation, particularly in the early lactation, can positively impact milk yield in high-yielding dairy cows, especially those in their first lactation or experiencing the persistent hypocalcemia. This is research work done by I know how well, and in 2021. This was published in the Journal of Dairy Science. You can refer to it also. Then vitamins, selenium and vitamin E play a crucial role by increasing the immune system and acting as antioxidants to combat oxidative stress, which leads to mastitis and reduced milk production. Here, vitamin E and selenium act only to reduce the oxidative stress. If oxidative stress is there, it leads to mastitis and there will be reduction in the milk yield. So it directly affects the milk production. Then selenium is a component of glutathione peroxidase, an enzyme that protects the cells from oxidative damage. Vitamin E also acts as antioxidants. Then recommended dose is 0.4 to 6 grams per day of vitamin E and 0.3 ppm parts per million selenium per day. Then niacin, no niacin is produced in the rumen by the rumen bacteria, it is not sufficient for high yielder. So it stimulates the feed intake. It prevents niacin, stimulates the feed intake. It prevents the ketosis and improves the milk production and increase milk fat content. Recommended dose is 6 grams per day per cow. That's the recommended dose of niacin. So high yielder animals should be given additional niacin at the rate of 6 grams per cow per day. Then dietary fibers, buffers. This was what I was talking when I was dealing with SARA, subacute ruminant acidosis. So dietary fibers, that is the saliva, it contains bicarbonates, which neutralizes the rumen pH. So when more of concentrates are fed to when more rapidly fermentable carbohydrates are fed to the cow, it leads to the production of excessive lactic acid. When excessive lactic acid is produced, naturally there will be a reduction in the rumen pH. So when the rumen pH comes down, it leads to a condition called rumen acidosis. So when rumen acidosis occurs, the ecosystem of the total rumen will go down, will almost come to a standstill. So in order to maintain the rumen pH, these buffers are added, dietary buffers in the form of saliva, which contains bicarbonates. Or one more thing is you can, when a case of rumen acidosis is seen, one can feed a long fiber, that's unchopped fodder, where the animal chews. When the animal chews, there will be more production of the saliva. When more saliva is produced, more bicarbonates will enter the rumen and it neutralizes the acidity. So this is how the mechanism works. Then some of the feeding strategies, extra ration demands, then top quality roughages. DM should comprise, dry matter should comprise highly digestible forage. Animals eat plenty of roughages. Slowly increase the concentrate supplementation. CP should be about 14%, and minerals and vitamins should be provided adequately. Then these slides are for the farmer basically. Economics. There is a word called cost an year or cost of production. How best the farmer can reduce the cost of production of a liter of milk. So the economics lies on this point. So here I wanted to say approximate cost of production per liter of milk. For example, if it is 15 liters producing cow, the cattle feed required is about 6 kilos, and cost per kg, if you take as 32 rupees per kilo, the total cost will be 192. Green fodder should be about 20 kilo, and cost is 5 rupees per kilo. You can take 100 rupees. Dry fodder 4, and the cost is 15 rupees, 60 rupees. Then mineral mixture 100 grams, it costs about 220 grams. So total the cost of production should be 24 rupees 80 paisa, or even the value will change depending upon the region. So the farmer should be intelligent how best he can reduce the cost of production of a liter of milk, and there lies the profit. The economy lies on it. Then land for loose housing. Each adult cow requires about 300 square feet of floor space. Per 15 cows, it should be around about 4,500. Then cows should be purchased at 60,000 to 80,000 per animal, and buffaloes it will be around about 80,000 to 1.3 lakh. Infrastructure, it includes the actual cost of erecting sheds, then utensils and equipment. These are the points to be considered while starting a farm to run economically. Then estimated cost will be around about 12 to 15 lakhs for about a 10 to 15 cow farm. Then variable cost, you have to take into consideration the depreciation cost. For example, if the cow is purchased for 75,000 and sold at 35,000 after 4 years, the depreciation cost will be around about 10,000 per year. So you have to take into consideration the depreciation cost of both animals and equipment also, and the sheds also. Then utensils and machinery, equipments like milking machines, cans, dung trolleys, and chaff cutters have a shelf life of 8 to 10 years. These items are with an annual depreciation rate of 20%. Of course, the cost varies from place to place. This is only for an idea I'm giving. Then feed and fodder costs, a cow weighing 450 kilo body weight, producing about 15 liters of daily. It requires about 13.5 kg dry matter, which is 3% of its body weight. This includes 6 kg of concentrate feed, that is 300 grams per liter of milk, and 1.5 kg for body maintenance. 300 grams into 15 liters, it is 4.5 kilo, and 1.5 kilo for body weight. So total 6 kilo. Here you can see. Then dry fodder should be about 4 kilo per day. Green fodder should be about 20 kilo per day. So this is about the variable cost that the farmer should take into consideration. The net return is dependent upon the managemental practices, of course, nutrition. Then cost of inputs, how best you can reduce the input cost. Then availability of crop residues, because these crop residues are made into rations in complete feeds, they can be utilized. Then timely attendance for the diseases, for example, especially the cases of mastitis and milk fever. Then prophylaxis, how best you can reduce the incidence of contagious disease or infectious diseases by way of vaccination. Then insurance, whether you are insuring the animals or not. Then marketing system, etc. So these are all the factors on which the net return or income is dependent upon. So finally, to conclude, I would like to say that service to dumb animals is service to God, and they bless us for our sincerity. And dumb animals are godlike. Sincere inputs to them will show our complete outputs. They don't know how to betray. So kind, then service. So proper inputs to the high yielding animals or any animal will give proper outputs to the full extent. There ends my conclusion. Now it is open for discussion. Hello?
Thank you, sir. That was a
Yeah.
wonderful session. We got a lot of insights from this session, and dairy
Okay.
farmers can implement these strategies.
Sure.
Our audience have shared few queries. We will take it one by one.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, one question is, does molasses have negative impact on cattle health?
Negative impact. Yeah, actually, molasses should not be included more than 10% in any ration. It should be 10% of the total feed, molasses. Because molasses is a soluble, contains, it is very rich in soluble carbohydrates and it is a very good energy source. Molasses actually, it promotes the growth of the bacteria in the rumen. So first of all, it is, when it is mixed with the feed, it becomes more palatable because of its smell and taste. Though anyone, that is one strategy, very good question. That is one strategy to increase the dry matter intake also. When molasses it is added to the feed, the intake will be more by the animal because it is more palatable. So it should not be more than 10% of the total feed. If it is more than 10%, it leads to diarrhea and all those complicated problems. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Another question is, why calcium and magnesium concentration are inversely proportional in serum of cow during milk fever?
You see, there is there are mineral interactions. There is a term called mineral interactions. When one increases, the other decreases. When other decreases, the one increases. So there will be a negative correlation between these two minerals. So there will be interaction between these two. Some of the things are there. For example, if even in amino acids also there is antagonism. There is some of the minerals. For example, if you see niacin, niacin and tryptophan. Tryptophan is an amino acid, whereas niacin is a B complex vitamin. So when niacin, for example, if you want to have a niacin, you can increase the tryptophan in the ration. So though both are positively correlated. So because niacin is synthesized from tryptophan, at the same time there is negative correlation between minerals and nutrients also. So this is the pattern on which these magnesium and calcium are inversely proportional. They have antagonism between these two minerals. Okay.
Another one is, how feeding of brewery waste will impact milk quality and quantity?
So brewer's waste is very rich in protein. Of course, it has nearly 29 or 30% of the protein, but at the same time, it is very rich in fiber also. So naturally, what these farmers are doing is brewers, it is called as DDGS, distillery dried solubles. Okay, distillery dried grain solubles, which is obtained from the beer industry as a byproduct. So these people, the farmers, they come and feed this because it is available at a cheaper rate. I think it costs about 4 or 5 rupees per kilo, or even more also nowadays. It has been, because there is a high demand for this one. I think the price has been increased to 7 or 8 rupees. I think, if I'm correct. So Beverly, this DDGS, if you feed continuously, there will be a, first of all, there will be a hike in the milk production and starts coming down. The curve for the milk production will be in the form of a parabola, in the form of a cap, Napoleon cap. So continuous feeding of the DDGS is not recommended for high-yielding dairy cattle. Or it can be fed alternatively, or it can be mixed with some other feed ingredient and should be fed. But totally alone feeding DDGS is not advisable. DDGS means the brewer's yeast. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, another question is, during transition period, before calving, do we have to supplement energy?
Definitely, that's what I was saying in my slides. Actually, 3 weeks, we have to start feeding extra ration 3 weeks before the onset of the parturition. Why? Because 3 weeks means because the animal, during the last, if you divide the total pregnancy into 3 phases, the gestation into 3 phases, one is first quarter, second quarter, and the last trimester. During the last trimester of pregnancy, the growth of the fetus in the womb will be very much. So last trimester, what happens is the growth of the bone will be more during last trimester. So when when the bone is growing, naturally it takes up calcium. So when the calcium, from where it gets the calcium? From where this calf in the womb will get the calcium? So it will take from the mother. So all the calcium that is present in the mother will be taken up by the calf in the womb and it grows. So when once the animal is cowed, because the animal already calving animal has less deposits of calcium because this calcium is taken up by the calf, and plus another thing is lactation, which is another stressful condition for the animal. Lactation also involves milk production and which is for which calcium is required. So there is a deficiency of calcium both before parturition and after parturition. So to avoid, and it leads to some other complications like milk fever. It's what I was telling you in the previous slides. So to avoid these complications, we have to feed extra ration about 1 or 2 kilos of concentrate feed during the last trimester of the pregnancy for the pregnant animal. Okay? Hello?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Got it?
Sir,
Hmm.
another question is, during summer season, for high-yielding animals, do we have to any particular feeding strategy?
Feeding strategy means first of all, when the animal is heat stressed, there will be a reduced dry matter intake. First of all, that's the most predominant sign we see for heat stressed animal or during summer stress. So to avoid this, we have to see that the animal takes more feed or more dry matter, which can be done by feeding either palatable feeds or by adding something like molasses. So molasses increases the dry matter intake naturally. So when it is taken care, no problem. Only problem is that animal should have sufficient water intake and animal should have sufficient dry matter intake. So these are the two things to be tackled during summer. Okay?
Sir, so in your slides, you have mentioned about rumen protected starch.
Yeah.
So can we get some more insights regarding that part?
Rumen protected starch is not that popularized, but only for information sake I have given rumen resistant starch or rumen protected starch. Only thing is the starch, because it's a straight carbohydrate, it gives energy for the animal. Because I said that after lactation, the animal will go to negative energy balance. So in order to prevent this negative energy balance, only this rumen protected starch is given. Otherwise, actually, it has no role in milk production, only to correct the NEB, negative energy balance. Okay, madam?
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Sir, another question is,
Yes.
why there is low dry matter intake during early lactation?
Low dry matter intake. Why? Because parturition is stressful condition and lactation is also another stressful condition for the animal. When the animal is stressed, naturally the dry matter intake will be reduced. So lactation is stressful condition. I told you in the beginning that during the first 6 weeks or 7 weeks, the milk production will be more. When there is more milk production, the animal will be under stress. So when the animal is under stress, naturally the dry matter intake will reduce. So once the milk production starts declining, the dry matter intake will be naturally taken up. That is, starts after 8 weeks. That's the reason. Main stress, animal will be under stress. Okay.
Participants, do you have any questions? If you are having any other queries, you can please share in the chat box.
Hello.
Sir, one more question as continuation of the previous question. Is there any method to increase dry matter intake during this period?
Yeah, first of all, you can feed high density feed. High density means containing more TDN value, total digestible nutrient value. Normally, we feed about 65 or 60 or 65% of the total TDN as energy. But you can increase up to 70 or 75%, you can increase, you will be increasing the energy density of the feed. That's one method. And another method is to you make palatable feeds, you add proteins. When protein is added to the diet, naturally the palatability will be increased. And another thing is we can add some of the feed additives like molasses, as we are discussing. Ultimately, our goal is to increase the dry matter intake by the animal somehow. Either you can increase the energy density, or you can increase the protein content of the feed, or you can add molasses to the feed. These are some of the strategies to increase the intake of the dry matter. Okay.
Thank you. So, sir, thank you for joining and taking this wonderful session for us. And
Thank you.
thank you, dear participants, for joining the session. Thank you.
Thank you.